Oh boy, where do I even begin with this? Well, I suppose we begin at the start. Welcome back to the Overclock Workshop. I was about to say it's been some time. It's been exactly how long as it usually is, or how long it's been over the past couple of months, which is every other week now, which is absolutely fine by me, because it means that the longer this goes on, the harder time I have remembering what I made for this. This isn't something that people might not know that we do actually record pretty much all of our content on the day. No different to this, except the material that's been prepared quite in advance in this case. By which I mean, I believe at least some of the Grenade Overclock Workshop episodes, the things that you'll be seeing, the graphics that you'll be seeing in those videos, would have been made like roughly a year beforehand. I can tell you that much. This, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months ago I made this. Actually, probably a bit. No, actually, 4 months is probably accurate. At this point. Either way, this is a series where I now attempt to suggest possible improvements or additions to our tools and grenades. Not exclusively about overclocks. It can't be anymore. And I've explained why many a time. I will literally not do so this time. But this week's episode, or this fortnight's episode, I really hope that didn't come across as... That probably wasn't funny, was it? This fortnight's episode is about the reinforced power drills, and this is not an episode of Fortnite, in case that's what that made that sound like. I'm just going to be suggesting random ideas for the power drills. Where do you even start something like the power drills though? They're the top tier of tools, for any of the dwarves. They outclass, I would say, mostly utilities, only competition being the sentries, and they are certainly the best traversal tool. Scouts grab the hook. There are arguments. The platform gun is pretty great, but power drills, incredibly versatile and useful traversal tool, and an incredibly efficient weapon as well. They really are Driller's tertiary weapon, just as important as primary or secondary in some cases. Not in every build, but as long as you take the damage mod, which you should, you're always going to be doing enough damage to tear through grunt hordes, and especially if you pair it with the cryo cannon. But even then, coating your enemies in fire or sludge will make the job of the drills easier in general. And we might be playing with fire and sludge today, and ice, with the drills, which might not come as a surprise. But the first overclock that I made is really the very epitome of the simple kind of overclock, a real clean, just a small increase to 2 parts of the drills. However, I want to point out that what we're adding to is range and carve size, as in the size of the area that you would carve as well as the range. The two sort of combine to create an overall larger, I guess, box that you're carving out, because the size, I suppose, would be the width, like up, down. Range would still be size, just forwards. Either way, so it comes across as very straightforward, clean, and it is. The sort of the kicker or the twist is that these two stats are not touched anywhere else on the drills. There are no modifications that alter these stats. So I thought it'd be interesting if we did. Now, the argument really comes down to, well, maybe we could just add these as upgrades, an upgrade for range and carve size. And I would say, well, that's actually a good idea, except for the fact that they might not be useful unless they're combined. So you definitely wouldn't want them in the same tier. As in, you could combine the two and make that one upgrade if you wanted to. I definitely see a future, a desirable future, I suppose. Not necessarily a likely one, but a desired future where all tools have 5 tiers worth of upgrades. Although I imagine this being built onto a pre-existing tier, I imagine. I think as good as the drills are, there is some reorganization of mods to be done, I think. Certain ammo mods that should probably be a part of the base weapon. Maybe you can make some room for an upgrade like this. It's not really befitting of a tier 5. We'll get into something that is in just a moment. But, how useful is this really? Probably quite useful. Or very slightly useful. I did say it's for the refined and disciplined driller who just wants to focus on the job. And for that purpose, I think it would work absolutely fine. I think possibly the best use for this would be carving out terrain to be used when you're creating sort of a better combat environment. Certainly, that's probably the best use for this. For example, when you're carving out the terrain around an uplink module or a fuel cell or anything like that. If you want to make room during a swarm, even if you want to make a bunker, even if I don't approve of that, you could do that with this. You could make more efficient bunkers without having to use satchel charges, even. So I think it would come across as a very nice utility, especially if you had the opportunity to combine the two. I think if these upgrades were segregated in a way where you couldn't at least have both, better yet, they should both be in the same upgrade. It probably wouldn't feel great if they were completely separate, as in you could only take one or the other. I feel like to feel the effects of something that increases your drill range and carve size, it's got to be both together. In fact, you could just make carve size the overall forward, every which way depth of the carving of the drills. So that can include the range if you wanted to, if you want to make it one upgrade. Obviously the name Reacher, nice little reference to Reacher. But yeah, I mean, there's not much to it. I just think I'd like to see some modifications or just something that plays with these stats in general. Honestly, I wouldn't mind it for the pickaxe either. Like the size of the area that you would carve would be pretty interesting with a pickaxe. Definitely want to see throwable pickaxes at some point as well, Ghost Ship, just in case you're listening. But on to the next idea. This is actually something that you might have thought of before. You might have seen something like this before. I think I have. I've definitely thought of something like this before. I'm not sure if I've seen someone make this as well. But here it is anyway. Griller. It's basically aggressive venting before the drills, and I reckon that makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways. We have it for the minigun, we have it for the track. What's another thing where it makes sense, you know? Well, Driller doesn't have an aggressive venting equivalent. But if we were to give him one, you have a couple of options, really, don't you? You do have the cryo cannon, which I'd actually love to see, aggressive cooling. You have the EPC and the wave cooker, but I think it would make things really interesting if we completely got rid of the idea of weapons, you know, and gave it to his traversal tool instead, because power drills are a high ammo weapon that uses heat and overheats, so why not? And obviously this does include a manual venting mechanic, like manual heat dump on the track, and yes, I am combining a lot of things from combining manual heat dump with aggressive venting in one overclock / upgrade. You need to look into that. I mean, a manual heat dump mod for the power drill would be very welcome as well as an aggressive venting equivalent. And I did write probably more Drac than minigun, although it wouldn't be plasma based like it is on the Drac. It would just probably be closer to the Drac's strength. And in terms of penalties, so we do have penalties here. I would choose armor breaking and fear factor. Fear factor is a small decrease. Armor breaking, you might notice that it's massive. That's because the drills actually have 10,000% armor breaking. I guess that might actually be because they need that much to be able to break armor as effectively as they do. So taking away almost all of it might not be a good idea. Maybe only 200% armor breaking on the drills is actually ineffective. There's definitely a possibility of that. Either way, the ability to aggressively vent to produce a radius of fire, but you're not using the flamethrower, I suppose, is the actual idea. How useful would that be? Well, you do have temp shock, you have sludge puddles. Unfortunately, you could take the EPC, but I suppose this allows you to avoid that. I think in general it would make using the drills in combat feel better, but it would also provide utility every now and then, and you could build around it if you wanted to. You have a way of setting your sludge on fire. You have a way of temp shocking frozen enemies without having to take temp shock, wave cooker, or plasma burn EPC. Although that is always pretty much the best idea, it means that you don't have to, and even then, it would still make the drills better, I think, unless the arm breaking is that essential. So that's really what it comes down to. I would say the thing I'd like to see from this the most is probably the manual venting. But if we could somehow combine those both into one upgrade, because obviously we know we're not going to get overclocks for these tools, which constantly makes me question the validity of this series. Nevertheless, the show must go on. But I'd still like to see it, and I think that manually venting is probably the best part of this. But if you were to combine the two, I don't think that's impossible as a tier 5 upgrade for the power drills. I should note that I guess I am explaining it again, and I can't help myself. But one of the reasons that Ghost Ship are against traversal support to Overclocks is because they don't want to tamper with the expectations that people have of your tools. They want them to be very predictable. I don't think any of the stuff I'm going to be suggesting today is actually going to hamper what people expect of the drills at all. It would simply add things that people would take note of and actually probably welcome on their team or welcome in their own loadout. That's why I think it's possible. I at least think it's very possible to expand the modification trees of all of our tools, make them more interesting, add tier 5s or even tier 4s where tier 4 doesn't exist in some cases. I think it's very possible to do without messing with the expectations of what people have of these tools. And even if you did, you would harbour, or you would over time, you would grow an expectation of the different possibilities that the tools have. I think it is very possible to go to more exciting places with the tools. Obviously, alternate tools is actually the best option for that. And if we could see each other's loadouts, that would be completely dissolved as an issue, because therefore we would know, oh, okay, our teammates got the other tool, so we know what it's going to do. You could remove that unpredictability if you wanted to, Ghost Ship. Just point that out. You might not be watching, but I just want to point. You are the developers. If you want to break down the barrier that's stopping traversal tool overclocks from being added or from new tools being added, you could, because that wall is people not being able to see your loadouts. If you add that feature, suddenly that won't be a problem. And I think that'd be beneficial for everyone if you could see your teammates' loadouts, especially while in the lobby. Then you could actually build around what your teammates are bringing. That's just a straight up good idea, and it would break down some of the it would dissolve some of the issues that are preventing certain things from being done, like overclocks for the tools or alternate tools. So sorry for going on that little diatribe, but I think I am very, very, very correct about this, and Ghost Ship are not. Even if they don't currently want to devote their resources to that, I think I am right about this discussion. Frankly, I don't think there's really any other. I don't think there's any way to take down what I'm saying. Anyway, I'm here to talk about the drills. So the final idea I had, actually, this would be the unstable. This is the unstable in the context of overclocks, and we'll see what we can do with it. Otherwise, is adhesive drill tips. The idea is that you could, we have sticky flames, we have sticky ice, if you want to call it that. I think it does have a technical name, but I'm not sure. Ice that stays on the ground, and we have sludge puddles. The idea is that you could dip your drills in it, which would give them that effect. You'd set the drills on fire, give them ice, or give them sludge for a short while, with penalties to damage and some of our mining utility. So how would this work, and why would it work? Well, that second one I'm not sure I'm equipped to answer, but the first one, I imagine you would either just briefly drill the element, I suppose, or you would get an option to dip them in by pressing X. Ideally, it would be something like that, I think. The description states that it'll be a way to extend the functional lifetime of your primary weapons, which is exactly the point. The drill sort of function, I said, as a tertiary weapon. I want it to be a way to make them more like an extension of your primary. The cryo, we do have that a little bit, but I want to go really further with that, where we take on board the effects that you can produce, add them to the drills based on what primary you're using. So you can keep things on fire for longer, you can keep things frozen for longer, but still deal that bonus damage. And you can even keep things corroded for longer. And I suppose corrosion is probably the most difficult one. Heat and cold, very easy to imagine. Especially with a high damage rate weapon like the drills. They would build up in enemies' heating or cooling meter to set them on fire or to freeze them. Corrosion is different. It's not a meter-based status effect. When I think about it, it really could be, couldn't it? You apply it to an enemy, you apply the sludge ball to an enemy, and it has to build up to that effect over a short period of time. Don't do that, Ghost Ship, though. Sludge pump is fantastic the way it is. But in this case, how would it work? Well, I imagine that it would simply just keep enemies corroded for longer, or it would corrode enemies while you're drilling them. So maybe you're not keeping them going for longer. You know, you could corrode enemies with your drills, but only while drilling them. It's sort of how I imagine it. I think there's a lot of potential here, possibly. There's not many directions you go with it. I guess with like the concept, I feel like it's probably quite restricted to this, unless you could pick up status effects from enemies, and that could include other status effects. But I don't think we should go that far. I like the idea of it being the sort of sticky version of your primary weapons element, the way it exists on the ground. You'd be able to pick that up with the tips of your drills and sort of apply it to enemies from your drills. Which, you know, it could be broken, it could actually be really weak and useless. I don't know, but I'd really love to be able to play around with something as extreme as this, you know, see what you could do. At the same time, I think it would boil down to being fairly simple, you know? It's like, it would almost just be a bit of what the wave cooker does, you know, with keeping things on fire or frozen for longer, but we also have the sludge aspect as well. So what can we really do with this? I'm not sure. Which is why I'm not sure how fantastic it is. You could potentially reduce the amount of time, like down to maybe 5 seconds, and it could actually slot in as a tier 5 upgrade. Maybe something I want to, like, a message I want to send with this idea is really that you can, even if I don't think it's the best idea in the world, it's still quite an extreme idea. It's still quite an extreme mechanic to add to a traversal support tool, and yet I don't think it would change what people expect from a driller at all in terms of what his drills can do. We do have reduced mining speed a bit, but if you take the mechanic on its own and was add it as a tier 5 mod, that's not changing the drills as a traversal tool. No one's going to be thrown off. In fact, they're only going to be pleasantly surprised when the driller is applying corrosion with his drills, you know. I don't think anyone's really going to be upset about that. So that's what that boils down to, I think. To show that it really is possible, we can have exciting stuff on our traversal and support tools. We really can. And we can do it without it messing with people's expectations of those tools, which is a sort of a point I'm hoping to get across with these videos, just in general. But realistically, that's all I've got to say. It's no bonus overclock this time around. You know, I was somewhat not anxious, definitely not anxious. I was a little bit apprehensive going into this about how valid any of these ideas were, but I feel like in retrospect they really come down to showing what can be done, what can be added to a potential support traversal tool in the form of overclocks or mods without messing with them too much, which is the thing that Ghost Ship are afraid of. I hope it's an overall thing that I'm achieving with this series, is showing that it is possible. That's something that I really want to do, as well as just put out into the ether interesting ideas in general, which I do enjoy doing. So, but yeah, like I said, that is actually it for today's video. If you enjoyed, please make sure to, you know, do that crap. I don't want to say like and subscribe, you know, especially not when I'm on my own. It feels way weirder when I'm on my own. But we'll say if you enjoy, then I don't know. You're welcome, I guess. All right, thanks for watching, guys. Take care.